There is a machine in China that can solve a problem in 4 minutes that would take the most powerful classical supercomputer on Earth over 10,000 years to finish. Not 10,000 hours, 10,000 years. And it is not sitting in a research lab collecting dust. It is not a prototype waiting for funding. It is operational, right now, today, in 2026. And that is not even the most important part of this story. Because while the world was watching Google and IBM fight over who had the best quantum computer, China quietly built 3 of them. 3 completely different technologies. 3 different approaches to the same impossible problem. And one of them, a machine called Zuchongzhi 3. 2. Just achieved an error correction rate of 99.5%. That number matters, because 99.5% is not just good. It is better than what Google published. It is better than what IBM shipped. It is the threshold where quantum computers stop being science experiments and start being real machines that do real work. This is happening right now, today, in 2026, and the Western quantum computing establishment has not caught up with what it means yet. If you want to understand how the most important technology race of the 21st century just got decided while nobody was looking, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel bring you more deep dives like this one. Let's get into it. To understand why this is such a massive shift, you need to understand the story everyone believed for the last 7 years. And to be fair, it was a good story. It had a clear hero, a clear villain, and a clear ending. The story went like this. Quantum computing is the future. Whoever builds the first useful quantum computer will unlock capabilities that make classical computers look like abacuses. They will break encryption. They will simulate molecules for drug discovery. They will optimize logistics across entire continents. They will solve problems that are physically impossible for any machine that runs on classical physics. And in October 2019, Google announced that they had done it. They published a paper in Nature. They called it quantum supremacy. Their machine, called Sycamore, had solved a specific problem in 200 seconds that they claimed would take the world's fastest supercomputer 10,000 years. The world believed it. The narrative was set. America had won the quantum race. Google was the undisputed leader. IBM was close behind. The future of computing belonged to Silicon Valley, and everyone else would be playing catch-up for decades. And here is the thing. Google earned that narrative. Sycamore was a real achievement. It used 53 superconducting qubits, quantum bits that can exist in superposition, in multiple states at once, arranged in a 2-dimensional grid. It demonstrated that quantum computers could actually do something classical computers could not. That was not a fake claim. That was real engineering. But here is the hidden cost that nobody talked about in 2019. The problem Google solved was useless. It was a deliberately constructed mathematical puzzle with no real-world application. It proved that quantum computers could do something classical computers could not. It did not prove they could do anything useful. And the reason was physics. Quantum states are fragile, incredibly fragile. A qubit in superposition will collapse, decohere, if it interacts with anything. A stray photon, a vibration, a temperature fluctuation of a fraction of a degree. The machines have to operate at 15 millikelvins, colder than deep space. And even then, errors happen constantly. Google's 53 qubits were noisy. They made mistakes. And in 2019, nobody had figured out how to correct those errors at scale. The machine could do impressive tricks, but it could not run a real computation that required thousands of sequential operations without the errors compounding into garbage. This felt like a problem with no real solution. The physics of quantum mechanics seemed to forbid it. You could build a quantum computer that did impressive demos, but you could not build one that was reliable enough to do real work. The gap between quantum supremacy demo and useful quantum computer looked like it might be decades wide, until China decided that the gap was not in the physics. The gap was in the approach. So here is the question everyone in the quantum computing industry asked for years. If error correction is the bottleneck, why did not somebody just fix it? Why did it take until 2026 for someone to build a quantum computer with 99.5% error correction? The answer is that everyone was trying to fix it the same way, and the way they were trying was hitting a wall. The dominant approach, the one Google and IBM both used, was superconducting qubits. You take tiny circuits made of superconducting metal, cool them to near absolute zero, and they enter a quantum state. You can manipulate them with microwave pulses. You can read their state. You can entangle them with each other. But here is the problem. Superconducting qubits are noisy. They decohere quickly, they make errors, and the standard solution was to add more qubits, not to do more computation, but to correct the errors of the first qubits. This is called quantum error correction. You use, say, 1,000 physical qubits to create one reliable logical qubit that does not make mistakes. The dismissive nickname in the industry was the overhead trap. For every useful qubit you wanted, you needed hundreds or thousands of physical qubits just to keep it stable. Google's 53 qubits in 2019 could not do error correction at all. IBM's roadmap talked about needing millions of physical qubits to build a useful machine. Millions. That was the official timeline, decades away. And there were 3 specific, concrete reasons nobody had broken out of the overhead trap. Reason 1. Coherence time. Superconducting qubits stay in their quantum state for maybe 100 microseconds. That sounds like a lot, but a quantum computation might require millions of operations. If your qubit decoheres before the computation finishes, the whole thing collapses. You need to make the qubits last longer, or make the operations faster, or add more error correction. All 3 are hard. Reason 2. Crosstalk. When you have qubits packed close together on a chip, manipulating one qubit accidentally affects its neighbors. This is crosstalk. It introduces errors, and the more qubits you add, the worse crosstalk gets. Scaling up makes the problem worse, not better. Reason 3. The cooling problem. Superconducting qubits need to be at 15 millikelvins. That requires massive dilution refrigerators that cost millions of dollars and consume enormous amounts of power. You cannot just add more qubits without adding more cooling, and the cooling infrastructure does not scale linearly. It scales exponentially. So the Western labs were stuck. They were adding qubits, but the error rates were not improving fast enough. They were building bigger machines, but the machines were not getting more useful. The dismissive framing for Chinese quantum computing was, they are copying us, but they are years behind. The assumption was that China would eventually catch up to where Google was in 2019. They would not leap ahead. That assumption held for 7 years, and then it did not. Here is the twist, and this is the part that changes everything. China did not try to beat Google at Google's game. They did not try to build a better superconducting qubit with lower error rates. They did not try to solve the overhead trap by making the same approach work better. They built 3 completely different quantum computers, 3 different technologies, 3 different answers to the same problem. Let me walk you through them, one by one, because the elegance is in the diversity. Machine 1. Zuchongzhi 3. 2. This is the one that made headlines. It is a superconducting quantum computer, like Google's Sycamore. It uses the same basic technology, superconducting circuits cooled to near absolute zero. But here is the difference. Zuchongzhi 3.2 achieved an error correction rate of 99.5%. That means for every 1,000 operations, only 5 produce errors. That is not a typo. That is the published number. How did they do it? The mechanism is in the control system. Zuchongzhi uses a novel approach to qubit coupling and error detection that reduces crosstalk between neighboring qubits. Instead of trying to isolate each qubit perfectly, which is physically impossible at scale, they designed the control electronics to detect and correct errors in real time, faster than the errors n propagate. The qubits are still noisy, but the system around them is smart enough to catch the noise before it destroys the computation. The old weaknesses of superconducting qubits, short coherence time, crosstalk, cooling requirements, they do not get fixed, they get managed. The substrate did not change, the control system did. Machine 2. Jiuzhang 4.0. This is the one that solves problems in 4 minutes. And it is not a superconducting computer at all. It is a photonic quantum computer. It uses particles of light, photons, instead of superconducting circuits. Here is how it works. You generate photons in specific quantum states. You send them through a network of beam splitters, phase shifters, and mirrors. The photons interfere with each other in ways that are quantum mechanical. They can be in superposition, they can be entangled. At the end of the network, you detect which paths the photons took, and that detection pattern is the answer to a computation. The brilliant part: photons do not decohere the way superconducting qubits do. They do not need to be cooled to near absolute zero. They operate at room temperature. They can travel through optical fibers without losing their quantum state. The coherence problem that plagues superconducting qubits simply does not exist for photons. Jiuzhang 4.0 solved a problem called Gaussian boson sampling in 4 minutes. A classical supercomputer would take over 10,000 years to solve the same problem. That is not a metaphor. That is the published benchmark. The machine is not general purpose. It cannot run any algorithm you want. It is specialized for a specific class of problems. But for those problems, it is faster than anything else on Earth. Machine 3, Hanyuan 2. This is the third approach, and it uses a different technology entirely. Trapped ions. You take individual atoms, strip electrons from them to make them ions, and trap them in electromagnetic fields. Then you manipulate them with lasers. Trapped ions have the longest coherence times of any qubit technology. They can stay in quantum states for seconds or even minutes, compared to microseconds for superconducting qubits. The trade-off is speed. Trapped ion operations are slower than superconducting operations, but they are more reliable. Hanyuan 2 is optimized for computations that require long coherence times and high fidelity, even if they run slower. And here is the brilliant part: the 3 old weaknesses of quantum computing: the overhead trap, the coherence problem, the cooling requirements. They do not get fixed in any single machine. They disappear because China built 3 machines that each sidestep a different weakness. Superconducting qubits are fast but noisy. Zuchongzhi manages the noise with smart control. Photonic qubits do not decohere but are hard to entangle. Jiuzhang specializes in problems where that does not matter. Trapped ions are stable but slow. Hanyuan 2 is optimized for problems where speed does not matter. The substrate changed. Not one substrate. 3. And the result is that China now has quantum computers that work across 3 different technology stacks, while the West is still betting everything on one. But lab demonstrations are one thing. Commercial deployment is another. And this is where the story stops being a research achievement and becomes an industrial reality. Zuchongzhi 3.0, the predecessor to 3.2, is already open for commercial use. Not in a research lab, not for academic collaboration. For commercial use, companies can access it. They can run real computations. They can pay for the service. This is not a roadmap slide. This is a product. And the national policy layer backs it up. China has officially identified quantum technology as a key driver for future industries in the 2026-2030 period. That is not a vague aspiration. That is a 5-year plan with specific targets, specific funding, and specific milestones. Let me ground the scale of this. China's quantum computing investment is not a few $1 million in research grants. It is billions of yuan in coordinated state funding across multiple provinces and research institutions. The University of Science and Technology of China, where much of this work originated, has built a dedicated quantum research campus. The Chinese Academy of Sciences has multiple institutes focused on different quantum technologies. Private companies like Origin Quantum are commercializing the technology, and the deployment is happening. In 2026, China is not just running experiments. They are building quantum communication networks, fiber optic lines that use quantum entanglement to create theoretically unbreakable encryption. They have deployed quantum secure communication between Beijing and Shanghai, a distance of over 2,000 kilometers. That is not a lab demo. That is infrastructure. Now look at the benchmark numbers again, because they are the proof that this is not just scale, it is capability. Zuchongzhi 3.2 achieved 99.5% error correction. That is the number that matters, because error correction is the bottleneck that was supposed to take decades to solve. And China solved it. Not perfectly, not completely, but well enough to cross the threshold where quantum computers become useful. Jiuzhang 4.0 solved a problem in 4 minutes that would take a classical supercomputer 10,000 years. That is quantum supremacy. The real thing, not the demo version Google showed in 2019. And it did it with a completely different technology that does not require the massive cooling infrastructure that superconducting qubits need. Every quarter, the error rates improve. Every year, the qubit counts increase. Every month, more commercial applications come online. This is happening right now, today, in 2026. The West spent 7 years believing they had won the quantum race. China spent 7 years building 3 different ways to win it. But here is the honest part of this story. And I want to be straight with you, because this format does not do blind hype. Quantum computers are still not general-purpose machines, and pretending otherwise would undermine the very real achievement that has happened. First, Jiuzhang 4.0 is not a universal quantum computer. It is a specialized machine that solves one specific class of problems, Gaussian boson sampling, extremely well. It cannot run arbitrary quantum algorithms. It cannot simulate molecules. It cannot break encryption. It is a purpose-built machine that happens to be faster than classical computers at one specific task. That is impressive, but it is not the same as having a general-purpose quantum computer that can do anything you want. Second, Zuchongzhi 3.2's 5% error correction is real, but it is still not enough for the most demanding applications. To break RSA encryption, the algorithm that secures most of the internet, you would need error rates closer to 99%, and you would need millions of qubits. Zuchongzhi 3.2 does not have millions of qubits. It has a few hundred. The gap between 99.5% error correction and useful for breaking encryption is still real. It is smaller than it was, but it is not zero. Third, the commercial applications are still limited. Zuchongzhi 3.0 is open for commercial use, but the use cases are narrow. Optimization problems, quantum chemistry simulations, specific materials science calculations. These are valuable, but they are not the same as having a quantum computer that can replace your classical server farm. The applications are still being discovered. The killer app that justifies massive investment has not emerged yet. Fourth, the infrastructure requirements remain enormous. Even photonic quantum computers like Jiuzhang, which do not need cryogenic cooling, require precision optical components, stable laser systems, and sophisticated photon detectors. These are not cheap. They are not easy to maintain. They require specialized facilities and trained operators. Quantum computing is still a boutique technology, not a mass-market one. None of this erases what the engineering has already proven. It simply marks the distance between a breakthrough and a revolution. The error correction is real. The 4-minute computation is real. The commercial deployment is real. The rest is scale, applications, and time, which brings us back to the bigger picture this whole story has been building toward. Because this is not really about quantum computers. It is about what happens when you bet everything on one technology, and your competitor builds 3. For 7 years, the Western quantum computing establishment bet the farm on superconducting qubits. Google bet on it. IBM bet on it. The entire ecosystem of startups, venture capital, and academic research aligned around one approach. The logic was sound. Superconducting qubits are fast. They are scalable with existing semiconductor manufacturing techniques. They are the path to a 1,000,000-qubit machine. And for 7 years, that bet looked like it was paying off. Google announced quantum supremacy. IBM shipped progressively larger machines. The roadmap was clear. The technology was converging. The race was being won. And then China revealed that they had been running 3 races at once. Superconducting qubits for speed, photonic qubits for coherence, trapped ions for stability. 3 different technologies, each optimized for different use cases, each sidestepping the weaknesses of the others. And one of them, Zuchongzhi 3.2, just achieved error correction rates that beat Google's published numbers. The world that ran on one quantum technology tree did not announce its own ending. It just started losing ground to someone who refused to pick just one branch. And here is the geopolitical layer that makes this irreversible. Quantum computing is not just a faster computer. It is a technology that can break encryption, simulate molecules for drug discovery, optimize military logistics, and enable theoretically unbreakable communication. The country that leads in quantum computing does not just have better computers. It has capabilities that the other country cannot match and cannot defend against. China has identified quantum technology as a key driver for the 2026-2030 period. That is not a research priority. That is a national security priority, and they are executing on it with the same coordinated state approach they used for solar panels, batteries, and 5G. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. When one country bets everything on one quantum technology and another country builds 3, and the one with 3 approaches just crossed the error correction threshold first, who do you think win as the next decade? The country that went all in on the best single option? Or the country that diversified across every option? Drop your answer below. I read every single one. And if you want to be here for the next time a 7-year consensus gets shattered by someone who refused to play by the rules, hit subscribe. We are building something here. And the next few years are going to be the most consequential decade in the history of computing. You are going to want a front row seat. I will see you in the next one.